পাবে না।
People of Bangladesh, they're very, very ungrateful.
আমরা সত্যের জন্য লড়তেছি।
তাহলে কি রাজাকারের নাতিপুতিরা পাবে?
When Sheikh Hasina returned to Bangladesh, she decided to participate in the parliamentary election under the banner of the Grand Alliance. The party was a de facto merger of 14 political parties throughout Bangladesh, although the 14-party alliance remained active individually. Sheikh Hasina made an agreement with the leader of the Ziaur Party, former president of Bangladesh, Mohammed Ershad, that he would be appointed as the new president of Bangladesh if they won the general elections. Awami League and the Grand Alliance won the 2008 general election with a two-thirds majority, having won 230 out of 299 seats in parliament. Khaleda Zia, leader of the BNP and four-party alliance, rejected the results of the election by accusing the chief election commissioner of stage managing the parliamentary election. Despite the protests from political opposition, Sheikh Hasina was sworn into office as the elected Prime Minister of Bangladesh on 6 January 2009. After being elected Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina renounced her agreement to appoint Ershad the new President of Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina removed Awami League Central Committee members who supported reforms by the previous caretaker government. In 2008, prior to the general election, Sheikh Hasina's son, Sajib Wazir Joy, co-authored a paper in November 2008 with Karl Chiavako, a veteran of the Iraq War, titled Stemming the Rise of Islamic Extremism in Bangladesh. In this document, Sajib laid out plans for a radical secularization program in Bangladesh. Sajib wrote this document as an advisory to the Sheikh Hasina Awami League government, as he believed there were troubling new signs of a shift towards a growing Islamism that could jeopardize the sanctity of secularism in the country. Sajib Wazir Joy offers a comprehensive roadmap for the radical secularization of the country. While strongly advocating the cause of an Awami League-led secular government with the fear of the rise of Islam and Islamism in Bangladesh, Sajib Wazir key points and advises the following to his mother, Sheikh Hasina, and the Awami League leaders. 1. Modernize and change the Islamic madrasa system of education. 2. Build more secular elementary schools and hospitals. 3. Military recruitment must be from secular academies and secular-minded students. 4. Rehabilitation of known extremist clerics and scholars. And 5. Reduce poverty and illiteracy among the masses. On 11 December 2008, she formally announced her party's election manifesto titled A Charter for Change during a news conference and vowed to build a digital Bangladesh by 2021. Her government had taken many initiatives to improve the all-round condition of Bangladesh and its people. Within the new manifesto, Sheikh Hasina's vision included pledges to implement measures to reduce price hikes, combat corruption by strengthening the independent Anti-Corruption Commission, and submission of annual wealth statements by influential people, bringing vibrancy to the agriculture sector and extending the safety net to the poor, creating good governance. Her manifesto also states her government will be reforming the electoral system, strengthening the Human Rights Commission and depoliticizing the administration. Also in the manifest, Sheikh Hasina was pushing her secular agenda and stated they will be curtailing terrorism and religious extremism. There will be the prosecution of 1971 war criminals, ensuring an independent and impartial judiciary. Once Sheikh Hasina and her Awami League came to power following the 2008 elections, it adopted a comprehensive plan which was fundamentally based on the advisory points in Sajib's document, stemming the rise of Islamic extremism in Bangladesh. Observing the 5 core advisory points of Sajib Wazir Joy, 4 clearly promote a secular agenda, and it is transparent that the primary objective of Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League, who have Sajib Wazir Joy as their official advisor, want to further secularize the people and institutions of Bangladesh and to remove any facet of Islam. Although Bangladesh has the 4th largest Muslim population of the world at 150,800,000. Sheikh Hasina and Awami League adopted a comprehensive plan to hold Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh accountable for war crimes during the 1971 Liberation War. By deploying a discourse of Islamic extremism and war crimes, as outlined by Sajib Wazd Joy, the Awami League government has tried to unleash extreme secularization in order to garner support from Western regimes in the post-9/11 landscape. The regime's utilization of international trends and narratives and willingness to play the terrorism card is indispensable to its long-held and systemic objective of eliminating Islam from the country's political and social landscape. Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League have been described as authoritarian and autocratic by various national and international observers. There have been many incidents which have happened in Bangladesh under Sheikh Hasina's new rule over Bangladesh. Over time, it was clear and apparent that this new authoritarian and autocratic rule was slowly becoming nothing more than a dictatorship. The oppression and injustice of political leaders and neutral students, alongside the corruption within all major institutions, were transpiring across the nation. One of the major national incidents Sheikh Hasina had to confront was the crisis in the form of the 2009 Bangladesh Rifles Revolt, also referred to as the Pilkhana tragedy, over a pay dispute which resulted in 74 deaths, including Bangladesh Army officers, their families and children. A recording emerged of Sheikh Hasina's private meeting with army officers who expressed their anger with how she had not reacted more decisively in the revolt's early stages. Sheikh Hasina was blamed by the army officers due to her refusal to intervene against the revolt. Muhammad Yunus is a Bangladeshi entrepreneur, banker, economist, and civil society leader. Yunus was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 for founding the Grameen Bank and pioneering the concepts of microcredit and microfinance. Yunus has received several other national and international honors. He received the United States Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2009 by President Barack Obama and the Congressional Gold Medal in 2010. In early 2006, Muhammad Yunus, along with other members of the civil society, participated in a campaign for honest and clean candidates in national elections. He considered entering politics in the later part of that year. On 11 February 2007, Yunus wrote an open letter published in the Bangladeshi newspaper Daily Star, where he asked citizens for views on his plan to float a political party to establish political goodwill, proper leadership, and good governance. On 18 February 2007, Muhammad Yunus finally announced that he is willing to launch a political party called Nagorik Shakti, which means citizens' power. There was speculation that the army supported a move by Yunus into politics. However, on May 2007, Yunus declared that he had decided to abandon his political plans following a meeting with the head of the interim government. In 2012, the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina had a falling out with Muhammad Yunus following a Norwegian documentary that was critical of Yunus's transferring of money from Grameen Bank to an affiliate organization. Yunus transferred the money back after the documentary aired, but it increased scrutiny of the bank by the government and media in Bangladesh. Yunus lost control of his bank following a court verdict. He criticized Sheikh Hasina and many other Bangladeshi politicians. Sheikh Hasina responded by saying she did not understand why Yunus blamed her when it was a court verdict that removed him from Grameen Bank. Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League retained power following the election in 2014. Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus faced 174 lawsuits in Bangladesh, 172 of which were civil cases. Allegations included labor law violations, corruption, and money laundering. Muhammad Yunus stated the allegations and lawsuits were politically motivated. Irene Khan, a former Amnesty chief, said the conviction of Yunus was a travesty of justice. A social activist and Nobel laureate who brought honor and pride to the country is being persecuted on frivolous grounds. In August, 160 global figures and leaders, including the former US President Barack Obama and ex-UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, published a joint letter denouncing continuous judicial harassment of Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus. Amnesty International accused Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her Awami League government of weaponizing labor laws when Yunus went to trial in September and called for an immediate end. Amnesty International also stated that the harassment and criminal proceedings against Yunus are a form of political retaliation for his work and dissent. On the 1st of January 2024, a court in Bangladesh sentenced Muhammad Yunus to a 6-month prison term for labor law violations. However, the conviction was overturned on the 7th of August 2024. In 2009, the Bangladesh government, led by Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League, set up an International Crimes Tribunal, or ICT, based on the International Crimes Tribunal Act of 1973. This was to prosecute the people who committed war crimes and crimes against humanity during the Bangladesh Liberation War in 1971. Such crimes were committed by the Pakistan Army and their local collaborators, the Razakars, Al-Badr Force and Al-Shams Force. The Razakar was an East Pakistani paramilitary force organized by General Tika Khan in what was then East Pakistan, now called Bangladesh. Razakar is a Persian term meaning volunteer. The Bangladesh government denotes all collaborators of the Pakistani forces as Razakar. The Al-Badr was a paramilitary force composed mainly of Bihari Muslims, which operated in East Pakistan against the Bengali nationalist movement during the Bangladesh Liberation War under the patronage of the Pakistani government. The Al-Shams was an anti-Bangladesh paramilitary wing of several Islamist parties in East Pakistan, composed of local Bengalis and Muhajirs. After the surrender of the Pakistan Army on the 16th of December 1971, Al-Badr was dissolved together with the Razakar and Al-Shams. Many members were arrested. The three mentioned forces were accused of conducting a mass killing campaign against Bengali nationalists, civilians and religious and ethnic minorities in 1971. During the time of President Sheikh Mujib Rahman, all of the collaborators and members of the Razakar, Al-Badr and Al-Shams were pardoned. The War Crimes Fact-Finding Committee, which was tasked to investigate and find evidence, completed its report identifying 1,600 suspects. Prior to the formation of the ICT in 2009, the UN offered its expertise, expressing an interest in helping Bangladesh avoid the problems other countries faced in similar trials. The European Union has passed 3 resolutions supporting the trials, and Jean Lambert has said she expected that the trial would conform to the highest standard possible. However, since the beginning of the trials, several human rights organizations and international legal figures have raised objections to the court proceedings. Human Rights Watch, which initially supported the establishment of the tribunal, have criticized it for issues of fairness and transparency, as well as reported harassment of lawyers and witnesses representing the accused. Polling in 2013 by AC Nielsen found that more than 2/3 of Bangladeshis characterized the ICT as unfair or very unfair. The first indictments were issued in 2010. However, the main perpetrators of the war crimes, the Pakistan soldiers, remained out of the reach of the courts. By 2012, the first men indicted included 9 leaders of Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh. These men were Ghulam Azam, Ziaur Rahman Nizami, Delwar Hossain Saidi, Ali Ahsan Mohammed Mujahid, Hamid Kamaruz Zaman and Abdul Qadir Mollah, and Mir Kashem Ali, Mir Gholam Parwar and Abul Kalam Azad. 2 leaders of the opposition Bangladesh National Party were also indicted, former government ministers Salahuddin Kader Chowdhury and Abdul Alim. Jamaat-e-Islami supporters and their student wing, Bangladesh Islami Chhatra Shibir, called a general strike nationwide on the 4th of December 2012. The group demanded the tribunal be scrapped permanently and their leaders be released immediately. United Nations human rights experts expressed concern that the trial did not meet all the criteria of a fair trial and due process. The tribunal has been criticized by observers in Bangladesh and overseas as being biased and problematic and lacking basic standards.
The Bangladesh government have withdrawn the national rules of evidence and rights from any accused and given them very restricted rights in the War Crimes Tribunal. In fact, they've withdrawn all the constitutional rights to a fair and impartial trial.
Brad Adams, director of the Asia branch of Human Rights Watch, said in November 2012, "The trials against the alleged war criminals are deeply problematic, riddled with questions about the independence and impartiality of the judges and fairness of the process." In its November 2012 report, Human Rights Watch found glaring violations of fair trials. Brad Adams, director of the Asia branch of Human Rights Watch, said, "If the Bangladeshi government wants these trials to be taken seriously, it must ensure that the rights of the accused are fully respected. That means making sure that lawyers and witnesses don't face threats or coercion." Toby Cadman, an international lawyer, has been highly critical of the ICT.
It's not an international tribunal. There's nothing international about it. The international community has widely condemned the actions from the very beginning. There were numerous procedural irregularities from the very beginning. They haven't received a fair trial.
Amnesty International has strongly criticized the International Crimes Tribunal of Bangladesh and said that the tribunal is not fully following international standards. Amnesty International also says there have been many flaws in the trial from the beginning. In Bangladesh today, Razakar is used as a pejorative and a degrading term meaning traitor. Although the international communities and human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, had strongly criticized the International Crimes Tribunal of Bangladesh, many members of the Awami League student wing Chhatra League, who held a secular fundamentalist ideology, had taken to the streets demanding death sentences and executions for the accused. These demonstrations were later known as the Shahbag movement. The demonstrations also sought the government's ban on the political Islamist group Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh from participating in politics, which includes elections, and a boycott of all institutions supporting or affiliated with the group. On the 7th of February, demonstrations began at 8 in the morning. Thousands of people gathered with banners, posters, Bangladeshi flags and placards in Shahbag with their demands. Amongst these secular, fundamentalist Chhatra League-led demonstrations, many were atheist extremists who were chanting anti-Islamic and anti-religious blasphemous slogans, and they had also published many inflammatory articles online across various social media sites. Ahmed Rajib Haider was a Bangladeshi atheist extremist blogger who was participating in these fundamentalist protests. He also used to blog in the online blogging communities and used pseudonyms. The secular extremist blogger Haider, who was at the forefront of the Shahbag movement, wrote inflammatory articles frequently, insulting and mocking the religion of Islam. A leading Bengali daily newspaper, Amadesh, published a series of articles featuring excerpts from several blogs written by Shahbag protesters, accusing them of blasphemy. On 15 February 2013, the secular fundamentalist blogger Haider was killed outside his house in retaliation to the inflammatory and blasphemous articles which were published. In 2013, Hifazat-e-Islam was formed in Bangladesh after the protesters were involved in publishing content offensive to Muslims and Islam, which included the depiction and portrayal of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in a derogatory and insulting manner. On 6 April 2013, Hifazat-e-Islam organized a long march towards the Motijheel area in Dhaka from Chittagong, Sylhet and Rajshahi to push for their demands. They arranged a rally towards the capital Dhaka demanding a blasphemy law and capital punishment of the atheist extremist bloggers who were involved in the Shahbag movement. On 4 May 2013, Hifazat-e-Islam activists gathered at all 6 entrance routes to Dhaka. With the permission of Dhaka Metropolitan Police, activists entered Dhaka and started moving towards the Baitul Mukarram National Mosque in order to attend a prayer service. However, peaceful activists of Hifazat-e-Islam were attacked by the ruling autocratic Awami League and Chhatra League members at various places using lethal arms, such as pistols and guns. In return, Hifazat-e-Islam activists threw bricks at them. During the clashes, 2 television journalists were injured. While Hifazat-e-Islam leaders were delivering speeches, the Secretary General of Awami League, Syed Ashraful Islam, at a press conference, threatened them to leave Dhaka. The opposition party, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, asserted that Hifazat-e-Islam members had a democratic right to assemble and articulate their cause. In the early hours of 6 May, security forces drawn from police, the Elite Rapid Action Battalion RAB and paramilitary border guard Bangladesh jointly launched an operation named Operation Secure Shapla to drive the Hifazat-e-Islam activists out from Dhaka. At the beginning of the operation, police cut the power supply in the city's commercial area, but the total operation was telecasted live over many television networks and channels. During the course of the operations, Diganta Television and Islamic TV were shut down by order of Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Once the power supply was cut during the demonstrations at Shapla Chatta in Dhaka, in the darkness of night, armed security forces began to attack and assault members of the Hifazat-e-Islam activists. Physical attacks with batons were significantly high, but worse, many innocent activists were seriously injured due to lethal force being used. According to government estimates, the number of casualties in this operation was 11, including a few law enforcement members. This figure was dismissed by Human Rights Watch and many other news agencies. Hifazat-e-Islam and the BNP claimed that 2,000 to 3,000 had been killed in the operations. Human Rights Watch called for an independent body to investigate the protest deaths which were authorized and ordered by Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. In 2011, Sheikh Hasina and her Awami League government abolished a 15-year-old requirement that general elections are overseen by non-partisan caretaker governments. The system was introduced in the mid-1990s in an effort to end violence and fraud that often marred voting. The opposition, including the Bangladesh National Party and Jamaat-e-Islami Bangladesh, has denounced the move, arguing that it could allow incumbent administrations to rig future votes. Since 2014, the freedom of the press in Bangladesh has declined dramatically. Sheikh Hasina and her Awami League government targeted and detained many leading newspapers, television channels, and pro-opposition journalists. Such actions reflect the actions of her assassinated father, Sheikh Mujib, in 1975, when he also imposed censorship on the free press and media. According to Ali Riaz, Awami League has established total control over state machinery and politics. Human Rights Watch have said that in government, the party has doubled down on an authoritarian crackdown on free speech, arresting critics, and censoring media. The general elections of 2014 was criticized by the United States and the European Union for irregularities. General elections were held in Bangladesh on the 5th of January. In 2013, ruling Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her autocratic Awami League party shut down TV stations and detained a prominent newspaper editor. Prior to the election, the government restricted opposition broadcasting. The government said the measure was necessary to curb violence, but the opposition saw this as politically paralyzing for them. Before the election, there were reports of opposition leaders and members being killed and arbitrarily arrested by the police. According to Human Rights Watch and the US Department of State, Bangladesh police arrested thousands of opposition members. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and the autocratic Awami League government also interfered with opposition parties' organization of political events. In December 2013, police prevented the opposition from holding pre-election rallies across Bangladesh. The police also prevented BNP supporters from organizing outside their own party headquarters and offices. Often, opposition leaders were detained shortly after they announced strikes to protest the elections. Authorities arrested 203 opposition leaders and activists on the 26th of December.
Bangladesh held elections in January 2014, and in the run-up to the elections there was a great deal of violence. In fact, this is probably one of the bloodiest elections in Bangladesh history. There were beatings, there were firebombings, and in fact, when the human rights workers went to the hospitals, they found entire wards full of firebomb victims.
আমার বাচ্চা স্কুলে গেছে, স্কুল থেকে আসছে, আসার পরে আমার বাচ্চার গায়ে এরকমই লাগছে।
The elections were not free and fair. One of the leading opposition parties accused it of using stuffed ballot boxes. The elections were preceded by a government crackdown on the opposition, with Bangladesh Nationalist Party and opposition leader Khaleda Zia put under house arrest. Almost all major opposition parties boycotted the elections, resulting in 153 of the 300 directly elected seats being uncontested, and the incumbent Awami League-led Grand Alliance of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina winning a landslide majority. The elections were criticized by the United States, United Kingdom, European Union, and the United Nations. 176 global leaders, including US President Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Joseph Stiglitz, issued a letter that claimed the election lacked legitimacy. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon lamented that the election was neither peaceful nor inclusive. He criticized both the BNP and the Awami League, saying they should resume meaningful dialogue and urgently address the expectations of the people of Bangladesh for an inclusive political process. The United States said the election did not appear to credibly express the will of the Bangladeshi people. The United Kingdom expressed disappointment at the low voter turnout and criticized acts of violence and political harassment that had taken place throughout Bangladesh. In 2018, a new Amnesty International report, Killed in Crossfire: Allegations of Extrajudicial Executions in Bangladesh in the Guise of a War on Drugs, reveals how the Bangladeshi authorities have failed to investigate deaths of people killed in gunfights. Bangladeshi authorities have allegedly killed 466 people in 2018 under the guise of an anti-drugs campaign in what appears to be a wave of extrajudicial executions. There are allegations of enforced disappearance and fabricating evidence by the law enforcement agencies in these suspected extrajudicial executions. The 466 suspected extrajudicial executions in 2018 alone marked a threefold increase on 2017 and the highest in a single year in decades. International human rights organizations have stated that the Bangladeshi authorities must put an end to these killings immediately. The anti-drugs operations have spread terror in some of the country's poorest neighborhoods, where people fear the slightest suspicion of being involved in drug abuse may lead to their loved ones being subjected to another extrajudicial execution. On the 8th of February 2018, during the Awami League government rule, opposition leader and chair of the BNP, Khaleda Zia, was sentenced to prison for 5 years. Mobile phone jammers were installed at Bakshi Bazaar court premises ahead of the verdict. Her party claimed that the verdict was politically biased. Khaleda Zia was sent to the old Dhaka Central Jail after the verdict. She was imprisoned as the sole inmate at the jail, since all the inmates had been transferred to the newly built Dhaka Central Jail. In 2018, Sheikh Hasina and her Awami League party won their third consecutive term when her Awami League party secured 288 of the 300 parliamentary seats. The leader of the main opposition alliance, Kamal Hussein, declared the vote absolutely farcical and rejected the results. Kamal Hussein and the leaders of his alliance parties requested fresh elections to be held under a neutral caretaker government. To the mass populace of Bangladesh, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was seen to be an authoritarian and autocratic leader. Before the 2018 general election, Human Rights Watch and other rights organizations had accused the government of creating an intimidating environment for the opposition. The New York Times editorial board described the election as farcical. Among other media reports, the BBC News observed apparent vote rigging by Sheikh Hasina's Awami League. In another BBC report, a correspondent reported seeing and being witness to a ballot box already full of votes prior to the polling station in Chittagong opening. Voters also complained about getting the ruling Awami League party's symbols stamped on their ballot papers and being instructed to vote for the ruling party in polling centres. In the presence of the voting officers, many voters were forced to vote for Awami League candidates, and when they refused to do so, they were assaulted. As of the 26th of December 2018, at least 12,923 people, mostly BNP and its 18-party alliance activists, had been injured in 2,833 attacks. Between the 8th of November and the 25th of December, at least 1,574 cases were filed against BNP officials in different districts. During the same period, 15,568 activists were arrested across Bangladesh. According to media reports, over 800 BNP and Jamaat-e-Islami officials were arrested between the 10th and 28th of December 2018. On the 29th of December, the day before the elections, Sheikh Hasina ordered the Bangladesh Telecommunication Regulatory Commission to suspend and disconnect all 3G and 4G connections across the country until after the elections. Many supporters of the opposition parties were arrested just before the Bangladesh general elections on the 30th of December 2018. The violence that erupted before Election Day left at least 17 people dead. On the 3rd of January 2019, Human Rights Watch called for an investigation on multiple attacks on members of the opposition parties on and before the general elections. By the end of fiscal year 2021 to 2022, Bangladesh's external debt reached $95.86 billion, a staggering and worrying 238% increase from 2011. The period is also marked by massive irregularities in the banking sector of the country. According to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the amount of default loans went from less than 230 million Bangladeshi takas, 23,000 crore takas, to more than 250,000 crore takas, the equivalent to $21 billion in 2019. In December 2022, the Hasina government ordered the closure of 191 websites accused of publishing anti-state and anti-Awami League news. Dhaka district authorities ordered the closure of Dainik Dinkal, which is owned by Khaleda Zia's son Ziaur Rahman of the BNP. Although an appeal was made against this ruling, the Bangladesh Press Council dismissed their appeal in February 2022, resulting in its closure. The authoritarian Awami League government led by Sheikh Hasina has closed down many opposition and independent media outlets over the previous years. The move to close down Tariq Rahman's Dainik Dinkal has been criticized by many opposition and independent leaders who claim this is an attempt to stifle any opposition to the authoritarian Awami League government. By 2022, Bangladesh was facing more challenges than ever before. Whilst the authoritarian government claims the nation is developing and succeeding, many international organizations view problems and drawbacks. Bangladesh has been governed by Sheikh Hasina's brutal regime since 2009 and, well, the lives of the general masses in Bangladesh only get worse. Indiscriminate attacks on students by the Chhatra League were carried out across many educational institutes across Bangladesh. Religious educational institutions were forced to change their curriculum to make it adherent to the Awami League's secular fundamentalist values. They were also prevented from holding public lectures and programs. On International Human Rights Day in December 2021, the United States Department of Treasury announced sanctions on commanders of the Rapid Action Battalion for extrajudicial killings, torture, and other human rights abuses. Freedom House has criticized the government for human rights abuses, the crackdown on the opposition, mass media, and civil society through politicized enforcement. On the 22nd of December 2022, 3 United Nations rapporteurs, in a joint letter, accused Sheikh Hasina's son, Sajib Wazid Joy, of sharing and publishing misinformation against them while they pointed out gross human rights abuse in Bangladesh under the brutal Sheikh Hasina regime. The letter, signed by Awa Balda, the chair rapporteur of the Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances, Clement Nyalet Sossi Vool, the Special Rapporteur on the Rights to Freedom of Peaceful Assembly, and Mary Lawler, Special Rapporteur on the Situation of Human Rights Defenders, read, "By bringing into question the authenticity of the submitted claims about enforced disappearances, the media has reportedly accused Odikar of wrongly influencing the WGEID's reports and action. The Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's son, Sajib Wazid Joy, advisor to the Prime Minister on Information and Communication Technology, has used his verified Facebook account to challenge the credibility and integrity of the WGEID. Previously, in June 2022, the Agence France Presse fact-check team found him sharing misinformation on former President Ziaur Rahman by misquoting a former president's book. In 2015, Sheikh Hasina's son, Sajib Wazid Joy, was given lifelong protection by the authoritarian Awami League government of Bangladesh through the Special Security Force.